Madam Clerk, please read House Bill 1568.
House Bill 1568 by Representative Meeks, an act to observe standard time year-round in Arkansas and to eliminate daylight savings time in Arkansas.
Representative Meeks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, colleagues, as soon as I walked up here and you saw the title, some of you were already sold on this bill. Others of you, however, may have been like I used to be. Daylight saving time is good for the leisure industry, and who doesn't like that extra hour of daylight at the end of the day? However, once I actually took the time to study the issue and learned all the harm that comes from it, I now understand why it's imperative that we turn to normal, permanent standard time. For all of human history, going back to the days of the sundial, we have operated on what is now called standard time. That is natural time by the sun and the time standard that all of nature operates off of. In 1784, during his time as an American envoy to France, Benjamin Franklin published the proverb that we're all familiar with, "Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise," suggesting that Parisians economize on candles by rising earlier to use morning sunlight. However, contrary to popular belief, so here's your fact for the day, Franklin did not actually propose daylight savings time. It was not until World War I on April 30th, 1916, that Germany, together with its allies, actually led the way in introducing daylight savings time. The aim was to alleviate hardships due to the wartime coal shortages and air raid blackouts. A month later, the United Kingdom used daylight savings time. In the United States, it was the retail and manufacturing interest that soon began lobbying for daylight savings time. When the U.S. entered the World War I in 1917, objections were overcome and they started daylight savings time. However, it only lasted 1 year because, contrary to popular belief, farmers have been one of the strongest lobbying groups against daylight savings time since it was first implemented. The factors that influence farming schedules, such as morning dew, dairy cattle's readiness to be milked, the time working in the fields, are ultimately dictated by the sun, not by what the clock on the wall says. So the time change introduced unnecessary challenges for them. Daylight savings time came back into use again during World War II, but it was not until the Uniform Time Act in 1966 that standardized the system we still use today. The Act gives states the option of either switching back and forth or going to permanent standard time. We don't have the option to go to permanent daylight savings time, as has been tried in the past. Hawaii opted out immediately. Arizona opted out the following year. So those two states have not observed daylight savings time for the past 50 years. By the time we got to the oil crisis in 1973, 80% of the American public supported actually moving to a permanent daylight savings time. And in December of that year, Congress made the switch. However, when they came back from their Christmas break just 3 weeks later, there were already calls for it to be repealed. Senator Clark from Iowa said, "I think it's time we recognize we may have well made a mistake." And in Florida, who today is one of the strong proponents of moving back to a permanent daylight savings time, the Florida delegation was opposed, and actually one of their representatives said, "The small savings in energy that we will make do not justify the loss of lives of our children, nor the hardships placed upon our children and their parents. The lives of our children should receive first consideration." The Florida legislature met in special session to move their clocks back to standard time because 8 school children were killed in pre-dawn accidents waiting for the bus. By the time the dust settled, less than a year later, only 39% of Americans still supported the move to permanent daylight savings time, and it was repealed after only 1 year. So whether we like it or not, like the rest of nature, our bodies were designed to be regulated by the sun. Left to their own, our biological clocks run generally on about a 24-hour, 30-minute schedule. It is the light of the morning sun that gently pulls us back to the 24-hour solar schedule. When we spring forward, we jerk our body clocks back to 23 hours. And we've all felt the social jet lag that comes from that change. Sleep specialists say that it generally takes about 2 weeks to get fully adapted, though research indicates we never fully do adapt, as the sun is always pulling our biological clocks back to standard time. It's even harder on at-risk populations such as the elderly and children. A 2014 study by the University of Michigan showed a 24% jump in the number of heart attacks on the Monday following spring forward. In 2017, a study by the American Economic Journal estimated the jump to DST caused over 30 deaths and had a social cost of $275 million annually. A 2019 study also showed a modest uptick in heart attacks. Certain neurological and mood disorders that are heavily dependent on morning sunlight are made worse. So the question is, why do we do this to ourselves every year? Evening twilight, it turns out, is just as important as morning sun. The red glow of sunset is what tells our biological clocks it's time to prepare for sleep. By pushing that back an hour, it pushes bedtime back. Studies have indicated that already sleep-deprived Americans get 20 minutes less sleep during daylight savings time than at other times of the year. Early morning drowsy drivers, not yet fully awakened by the delayed sunrise, cause more accidents. A study from 2020 showed a 6% increase in fatal vehicle accidents following the jump to daylight savings time. This prompted this past November, the American Medical Association called for a move to permanent standard time. Dr. Ding, who's a trustee of the AMA, said, "For far too long we've changed our clocks in pursuit of daylight while incurring public health and safety risk in the process. Committing to standard time has health benefits and allows us to end the biannual tug-of-war between our biological clocks and alarm clocks." The American Medical Association is not alone. More than 20 other health organizations support permanent standard time, including the National Sleep Foundation, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, the American Academy of Cardiovascular Sleep, and the American Academy of Neurology. It is clearly bad for our health. So again, why do we do it every year? In the 1950s and 60s, most schools started between 8:30 and 9 a.m. By 2000, many high schools were starting at 7:30 or earlier, and a growing number of studies shows that these early morning school schedules can undermine teenagers' ability to learn, to drive safely, and to get along with others. Believe it or not, it can even increase the likelihood of smoking, drug abuse, and teen pregnancy. So what do? Of course, each spring, we jerk their schedules even earlier, exasperating the problems. And then we do it right before we're asking them to do well on year-end standardized tests. Again, why do we do this to them? Now, daylight savings time does have some benefits, of course. Golf course operators, retail and leisure outlets do benefit from the extra hours in the evening. Some evidence also suggests there may be fewer car crashes in the evening and a decrease in robberies. However, while some benefits do benefit, others don't. Y'all remember drive-in movie theaters? They were popular in the 60s and 70s. Some people say the move to daylight savings time was their demise because in the summer it pushed the evening twilight back beyond what was practical for moviegoers. Morning-focused businesses, coffee shops, and diners can also suffer. One estimate, as stating in Bloomberg, says the time shift costs the U.S. economy over $400 million annually. Due to the loss of sleep, employees are less likely to be self-regulating their behavior and more inclined to spend time cyberloafing. Have any of you been guilty of cyberloafing? Some of you may be doing it right now, right? I had never heard the term cyberloafing until I started researching this. Now let's switch this around to see how absurd this is. If I brought a bill to you that said, we're going to make all of society get up an hour earlier with its corresponding health issues and economic losses for the benefit to the leisure industry, would you support it? Probably not, but that's what we do every year. Now, some of you live on the border, and you're concerned about the hassle it would create, but don't just assume your citizens would be opposed to it for that reason. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine in July 2020 did a study that said 63% of participants would welcome the elimination of daylight saving time in favor of a fixed year-round time schedule. For the elderly, that number jumped to over 77%, wanting it back and forth eliminated. When asked what values were most important to you when choosing what system would be optimal, 63% of Americans said they want the system that is healthiest and most in line with human biological rhythms. That's standard time. 55% said they want to use a system that promotes safety in the morning among commuters, and children going to school. Again, that's standard time. 49% want the system that makes sleep better. Again, that's standard time. People across the country deal with the hassles of different time zones. Arizona's done it for over 50 years. People that live along the Alabama-Georgia border live across different time zones. They deal with it. Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, and other states have time zones shifts within their states. Are the detrimental aspects really more important than saving people the hassle of dealing with cross-border time zones? So some people may have asked, why not we just make this a trigger law? Several other states have bills to create permanent daylight savings time. Arkansas is not the only one. There's about 7 or 8 other states that are looking to do this. Most of them are trigger laws. But you know what a trigger law does? A trigger law is you putting your fate in the hand of somebody else. To be first, to be a leader, sometimes means you have to step out front. Too many times, we're tired of being last. Well, to be first, to be an example for somebody else, that means you have to be one of the first ones to step out. I think we should do it. I'm going to finish up by saying this. If I brought a bill that improved childhood safety, you'd probably support that, right? If I brought a bill to you that would improve the health of our citizens, surely you'd support that as well. If I brought a bill to you that improved worker outcomes and improves our economy, surely you'd support that. And if I brought a bill that created an environment that helps our students to improve learning and outcomes, you'd support that as well. You know, this bill does all of that. And here's the great thing about it. We literally have to do nothing to achieve it. We just don't spring forward next year. By the way, the whole reason for springing forward was to save energy. It doesn't. Studies have showed it actually may cost more energy. So daylight savings time is a failed government experiment, and it's time for us to bring it to an end here in Arkansas. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Representative Collins, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized.
Thank you. I'm just wondering practically how it would work if it goes into effect in July. Is that the day that we would bring our clocks back?
No, it would go into effect next year. So we would do normal this year. We would fall back in October. And then next year, when it came time to spring forward, we just wouldn't spring forward. And I'll follow up on this. If we decide to do this next year and we not spring forward, and it just turns out to be a complete disaster, we come back in 25, we can repeal it, and we can be back to jumping back and forth like everybody else. However, I think like Arizona, once we do it, we'll be asking ourselves, why didn't we do this sooner?
Representative Dalby, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized.
Can you explain to me how I can determine when I go to eat on the Texas side of town when they don't change their time?
So Texas. So there's actually, yes. So there's actually a bill right now in the Texas legislature that would allow the citizens of Texas to vote this year whether to stay on permanent standard time. So there's actually some motion in Texas to do that. And wouldn't it be nice if they followed us for once and to standard time instead of us waiting for them? Now, as far as the, us versus Texas, they do it all the time. If you are a lawmaker, so for example, from Knoxville, when you travel to Nashville to a session, you're falling back an hour because of the time zone. When you go back to Knoxville, you would jump forward again. You do it back and forth. So it would just be during the summer, it would just be the difference of, is that 3 o'clock Texas time or 3 o'clock Arkansas time? And again, I understand there could be a little bit of hassle there, but what's more important, the health of our citizens or that little hassle of maybe getting confused that hour difference between Texas if they stay on daylight savings time?
Follow up?
You're recognized.
There's a big difference between a time zone crossing a state than crossing a street. Wouldn't you agree?
Representative Mayberry, for what purpose?
A question.
You're recognized.
Representative Meeks, help remind me, because we had this issue comes up just about every session in some way, but we passed a resolution that, if I remember correctly, said that if it passes nationally or is changed, that we would do just the opposite of what you're saying.
Correct.
Can you help me remember what that resolution is and how that would affect what you're trying to do right now?
Right, so what you're talking about is there's been some efforts to make a trigger law to allow for a permanent daylight savings time. Federal government does not allow that. So as I said, the vast majority of Americans just want the back and forth to stop. They don't necessarily care which one it is as long as we stop. Right now, federal law does not allow us to go to a permanent daylight savings time. So there have been attempts to try to say, if Congress allows, then we will go to a permanent daylight savings time. I think those attempts have failed. It's passed the House, but not made it past the Senate. So this would not, we don't have a trigger law in effect to my knowledge right now on daylight savings time. And if there were, this would trump that.
Representative Gramlich, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized.
So if we were to vote for this bill, would phones and stuff automatically know that if you're in Arkansas, don't switch? Because it'll be mass chaos for a couple days if it does.
Yes. Yes, your phones would switch. If you've ever driven across country, whenever you cross state borders or time zones, your phone switches. As it switches from one cell tower to another cell tower, yes, your phones will update. So, yep. All right, seeing no other questions.
Representative Wooten, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative Meeks.
Yes, sir.
Did you make the statement that the elderly are for this?
According to
we have a hard time telling time, much less knowing
sure,
where we are.
Yeah, yes. So, according to a recent survey, 77% of people over the age of 65 want the back and forth to stop. And this is the only way we can make it stop, is by going to standard time permanently. And when we make that jump forward every year, that the effect on our bodies, the older you get, the more pronounced and the harder it becomes on your physiology to make that adjustment.
Thank you. Well, let me follow up.
You're recognized.
If 77% of wisdom says that be the thing to do, you think that might tell you something.
I think so.
Now, could you do like I do? My clock tells me it's 2:05.
Correct.
Thank you. It's really 3:05 by the government time.
Yes. By the sun and nature, it is actually 2:05, not 3:05. Yes. All right. Seeing no other questions, I'll step out and then I'll have a few closing remarks.
Representative Meeks has explained the bill. Would anyone like to speak for the bill? Against the bill? Representative Berry, for what purpose?
Motion.
What's your motion?
Immediate consideration.
The proper motion, non-debatable. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. Question before the House is passage of House Bill 1568. Prepare the machine, Madam Clerk. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Cast up the ballots, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 26 yeas, 53 nays, and 12 present, the bill has passed. Failed.